and welcome to the Fantasy Rewind Podcast. I'm your co-host, Dylan Stoll, and I'm joined as always by my friend Mike.
Hey.
So we are back after a long hiatus.
A long break.
Of just having life be busy and getting in the way here. But
really, we were just hanging out with the Balrog, just taking a big nap. And when he woke up, we woke up too, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what it is, right? Like, we're that, unimaginable, unknown danger lurking in the dark.
That's why there was, 3 yells. There's the, initial, that was the Balrog. And then there was the louder one, that was me. And then there was the loudest one, and that was Ethan.
So, we're going to talk about Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power, today. Season 2, Episode 6? Episode 5. Oh my, look at me. Episode
Halls
5.
of Stone.
Titled House of Stone. Halls of Stone. Dear God,
We're keeping it.
We're in good form. Okay. Season 2,
Shaking
Episode
off that
5,
stone.
Halls of Stone. All right. Before we butcher this any farther, I'm going to give out the typical reminders. If you want to get in contact with the show, you can send us an email, which is fantasyrewindpod@gmail.com. If you want to get at us on Instagram, that is at fantasyrewindpod. And we are still on X, which is at Fantasy Rewind. Don't ask us if we ever post on our socials, because the answer is probably not. But if you want to get in contact with the show, we'd love to hear from you. Any suggestions of stuff we should cover, any feedback on what we're doing as far as the podcast goes, all that good stuff. But without any further delay, Mike, let's dive into the rewind.
Fantasy Rewind. All right, Dylan. So this episode had us, primarily with the dwarves.
Mm-hmm.
Halls of Stone, dwarves. It makes a lot of sense here. We have them getting their rings of power, 7 to the dwarf lords.
Halls of Stone.
In their halls of stone. And we have, the 9 rings for men sort of in production a little bit, even though
unwillingly in production.
Yeah, Celebrimbor is not part of that process until the very end of this episode. But kind of a lot to kind of dive into here. I think if we just sort of get through the elven bits,
yeah,
and the human bits, we'll sort of be able to just get through the meat of the dwarf stuff.
Sounds good to me.
So overall, though, this episode, it was okay. It was whatever for me.
Yeah, it was all right. Not too much happened, but it's all right.
Really, it's just setting up episode 6 or 7.
Mm-hmm.
Whatever is going to be the big, which is going to be probably 7, but it's just setting it all up. So we have, let's get the human realm here. The queen is like, oh, yeah, I'm sorry, I'm out of power. We got to move on. And we have, oh my gosh, what's his name? Not Faramir.
He actually does remind me quite a bit of Faramir, but it's Elendil.
Like him. Elendil. Yeah, we have Elendil giving up his sword, because he was loyal to the queen. And so, they're kind of out of service. And you can tell, he still has the respect of the men he was over and everything else with their chanting of captain, captain, captain. And you have the son of the new king very upset at that, he's respected. And yeah, there's some tension there, which boils over when they're having a memorial service for the dead. And, the son of the king comes in and is like, this shrine is being condemned, and you all have to leave. And leads to some fisticuffs because he's talking crap, because he's a little shit.
Yeah.
And we have one of Elendil's son's friends who was one of his shipmates, whatever, his underlings, I don't know, subordinates, and he gets stabbed in a move that I thought was pretty cowardly.
Well, so let's unpack that a little bit more there. So the scene that Mike originally was talking about, there was a bunch of the soldiers from Numenor that were loyal to the queen were basically told, you're no longer wanted here. Hang up your swords. You're no longer enlisted in the army. So Elendil goes there and is like, what's going on here? And they're like, yeah, it's time to turn it all in. You're no longer a part of the army. And so Elendil tries to set an example for the men and returns his sword peacefully, restrains himself from punching this kid in the face as he pokes the bear, and then walks off to like chants of his men like cheering for him still, despite like protests from the new people in power in Numenor. And then at this shrine, when everything was going down, Isildur's one friend, who was one of Elendil's shipmates, one of his subordinates, was beating the crap out of the new king's son. Out of Pharazôn's
he got drowned.
Son. And yeah, he was
fair.
literally drowning this kid. Or drowning this guy.
Well, no, he was being drowned. So, like, the kid was... The son of the king was holding his own for a bit, drowning him. He finally got up and got the better of him and pretty much had his... Because this kid finally... I don't know his name. So we're saying kid. But the little snot drew his sword, and then, Isildur's friend basically broke his arm and could have ended him right there. Chose not to.
Well, he was about to, and then Elendil's like, hey, no. We're not about that. And then so he showed mercy and didn't kill him. And then 2 seconds later, the snot-nosed brat of Pharazôn stabs him in the back behind him, killing him.
Yeah. And then cleaning his blade in the shrine.
Right, like, cleans his blade in
so
the
much
sacred
disrespect
water.
Or anything else. And Elendil, this was like my issue with this scene. Elendil like catches him and is like holding him, and I'm just like, what are you doing?
I mean, at that point, there's not too much he could do.
You can kill that kid. Like,
if he did, though, then the rest of the guards would have swarmed him. I mean,
they
granted,
they didn't do anything when that guy was on top of him.
Yeah,
like,
you're right.
You know what I mean?
But it's also like having respect for the place too. Like, he didn't want to shed blood in a sacred location, so I don't hold it against Elendil for staying true to his beliefs, his faith, and stuff like that. There, but it was just showing like the disrespect that the new regime has for anything resembling the olden ways.
Yeah, agreed with that. Agreed. And it's really that kid. He's going to get his comeuppance, I'm sure.
He absolutely will. I mean, it's just a matter of what fate he meets. But something else we do see in this Numenorian section of the show is Pharazôn, despite all his holier than thou, I'm not going to touch the stuff from the elves, he is tempted to look into the Palantir. And
I wonder how that's going to end.
Yeah, let's see how that goes for him.
Yeah, but that's pretty much it for the humans. You do have Elendil's daughter pretty much being a traitor, which we've kind of known for a while, but kind of continued on. And I think that also drove a little bit of Pharazôn's son to
be as bold as he is.
Yeah, because he wants to, show it to Elendil. And anyway, so that's that. Now let's get to the elves. Particularly, we'll get to the High King, he sort of was dealing in this episode with what to do about Mordor and Eregion. Eregion, and where to put his troops, right? And he's listening. The Ring's telling him bad stuff's gonna happen, and by the end of the episode, we find out that he sends his troops to Mordor.
Yeah,
even though Elrond comes back a little too late to tell him you need to go to Eregion. And I'm saying it wrong. Like it's a cheese. A fine cheese. A Eregion. I want some Eregion on my...
Eregion, Parmigiano.
Yeah. I thought this was just like... I know it's just like the timing of everything, right?
Yeah, the timing of everything. It just
sort of loses its punch when it's like every episode.
Yeah, I agree.
And, anyway. So, too late, too little, too late. We have the whole ring business. Now, we're just going to kind of go with the dwarves and just interweave this.
That makes sense to me. This is where we have the story of Celebrimbor and Sauron and...
Yes. So they forge the rings for the dwarf lords. They invite Durin and tell him, hey, go get your dad and, here's a ring that's going to help save the mines, right? He brings it in. Dad puts it on. And, they're trying to fix the sunlight, and, oh, Dad, I find the spots. Dig here, dig here, dig here. All of a sudden, yep, he brought the sun back. Everything is fixed, right? Everything's good. Everything's gravy. They're all best friends again. Like, this is where the, doors of Durin.
Right. Yeah, Celebrimbor makes the doors of Durin that are used in Fellowship of the Ring to enter Moria, the whole speak friend and enter scene.
Correct. And, much rejoicing. But, oh, wait. The bringer of gifts is not happy.
No.
Celebrimbor.
Anatar is like, enough is enough. We got these dwarves their rings. Forget them. Let's get working on rings for men now, please.
Men need this. And Celebrimbor's like, absolutely not. They're so easy to corrupt. Like, no.
And he's like, yeah, I know. That's why I want them to have it.
Yes, that's why you're going to make these rings for them, because I'm going to get all up in their minds. Just like he gets in the Dwarf King's mind, apparently within
2 seconds.
I don't know, a couple days. He goes from not being greedy to being 100% more greedy, if like 50% more greedy. Who knows?
Yeah, like 1,000% more greedy.
It's wild, like how quickly it feels so quick.
The corruption
does.
Longer. It feels so ridiculously fast, and I think it's done because they don't have the time to really like stretch it out. They're trying to like cover so much ground, but the way that it's portrayed, just with the corruption being instantaneous, it's like, why would you ever trust the rings ever? Like, maybe Elrond has a point if this is how quickly it corrupts them.
Yeah, completely agreed. But yeah, that's Dwarf Daddy, Dwarf King.
Dwarf Daddy
he has been corrupted, basically. He's just very greedy. His son notices this and, is going back to Celebrimbor and's like, what did you, like, is something wrong with the ring? Like, he's, like, not acting like himself. Was something different in the process? How much do you really know about this Anatar guy? Mm-hmm. And all fingers in this episode are getting pointed right at Anatar, and yet he just definitely steps it like, oh, well, remember, you lied. Or when one of the Merendia puts on one of the rings meant for humans that they were forging, she turns invisible and sees the unseen world, and she sees this figure in flames and all death and everything else, and he's like, no, that's Celebrimbor. Right. Yeah. Like, girl,
his soul's
come
corrupted.
On now.
We need to save him.
Yeah, okay. Like, it's just, some of it I'm just like, it's a little too on the nose here, guys. Like, just think for a second.
Yeah.
But, yeah, basically all fingers getting pointed to him, and he's just sidestepping it, and he pins it on Celebrimbor when, like, oh, well, the difference here is, like, you were doing that under lies.
Right. So, like, the falsehood leaked into the work.
Yeah. And so now we got to try it again. Like, this is the part that made no sense to me. I'm like, so now you got to try it again, keep going ahead, and you're just going to alter stuff instead of going to the king to fix what you said? Like, even send him a letter and be like, hey, I'm sorry, I lied. I actually made 7 rings to... Like, if you don't want to stop, that's fine. But then just be honest, send it in a letter, and move on. Right? That would be the way. He's like, you're going to go to the king, and he was really just trying to get him out of the forge, right? Yeah.
Yeah, no, he definitely was.
Yeah, and so... moral of the story here is Celebrimbor is like, I'm going to help you forge the 9 rings. We're going to make these the best yet.
Right. He's like, you can't do this without me. I'm going to step in here and just flex on you real quick. And then it's just the full-on corruption of Celebrimbor. Again, like, not willingly, not wantonly. It's more so like the reluctant acceptance of, okay, this is going to happen. If it's going to happen, it's got to be done right. I'm the only one who can do it right.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Anyway, so we know how that's going to end.
I'm excited to see what happens as far as the portrayal in the series goes.
I am interested too. We do see, though, that in this episode, the dwarfs, we have Prince Durin's wife, who is the stone singer, ends up dropping a bauble and ends in this weird spot of the mine. So weird because it's like she's in the market and then it's like, oh, I've never been out here before.
Yeah.
Like what? Like, yeah. And she sings to find this orb, and then what sings back but a Balrog?
And to be fair, we do not see any Balrog in this episode.
Yeah, but we know it is.
We know it's Durin's Bane.
Yeah, and this did happen before Durin went and confronted Celebrimbor about the ring, but is part of the process. But Prince Durin is reinstated because he cannot sway his dad's mind to stop digging down deeper, even though there's an evil down there. He promises his wife he will never wear the ring. Mm-hmm. I think we both know how that'll end.
Well, I mean, I don't think he ever will, because I think that his dad will die with the ring and maybe get eaten by the Balrog or whatever, wearing it.
Oh, maybe. Or he hands it to his son before he fights it. Who knows? We shall see. But, yeah, that's it with the dwarves. But this episode does end with one other character making an appearance, and that is Galadriel.
Ah, yes, the famous Galadriel, the Alliance Forger, the Orc Whisperer.
That's a great line. Because apparently a deal wants to be made between Galadriel and... Well, Adar wants to make a deal with her. And their common enemy is Sauron.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. And it also makes sense why he's trying to attack Eregion is because he knows Sauron is in there. Which, again, that part never made sense to me. Like, listening to Halbrand basically be like, oh, I'll get in there for you and get rid of him. Like, what?
Yeah.
What? That never made sense.
No.
Never.
That's just straight plot to allow him to go. Well, I mean, I don't even know why he did that, because like he willingly went to Adar to basically spread some lies and then leave and go to Eregion, which is where he wanted to go in the first place. So why not just skip that whole first step and just go right to Eregion?
I have no clue. That part made very little sense to me. Maybe I'm misremembering season 1, and I'm not going to go back and rewatch it.
No.
But it didn't make much sense to me. But anyway, that was this episode, Halls of Stone. Overall, again, we advance a little bit, but let's get to the conclusion here. I'm sure a lot of people are going to die in the coming fight because we all know that while most of the forces went to Mordor, there's still going to be a force that goes to Eregion. It'll be led by the king. Galadriel will be there, and Anatar will be there. Mirandia is probably going to be there. And she's probably going to die.
Oh, she's definitely dying. She's 100% dying.
Oh, she saw his true form.
She is like Temu Galadriel is what she is. Just knock off Galadriel. And it's Sauron mad that Galadriel turned him down, so he's like, ooh, blonde young elf. In fact, I think in this episode he tells her.
He does.
Yeah.
He's like, you're kind of like Galadriel. If the light hits you just right, you're kind of like a young Galadriel.
Yeah. So,
okay, creeper.
Yeah, very creeper. So yeah, overall, this episode was nothing special in my opinion. It just was an episode that slowly advances the story a little bit, focusing on the dwarves and their rings and everything. And really just, again, highlights to me just like some of what's done wrong in this show is like letting some things be as rushed as they are. Because how quickly the corruption impacted King Durin for the dwarves. How quickly Elrond was able to get from Eregion back to Lindon to report to Gil-galad. Like, all of these things that just, like, they are rushed, they're sped up, and then in other parts they just slow them down to a crawl to the with the most out there, original for the show aspects that are just, like, focused on, and I don't know why, but I mean, all in all, this show it's far from where I wish it was. Mike and I were talking before the show, before we were recording here, and just like saying how we're really not excited to finish off this series, and we wish we were. And I wish that the show was better than it is.
Yeah, and I mean, we talked, and we should probably have an episode at some point where we just kind of talk about sort of that conversation we had with what makes a good fantasy show, at least in our opinion. And again, this is all opinion, so we can say whatever we want. But in our opinion, what makes a good fantasy show, what makes a poor fantasy show or adaptation. And I think honestly, my biggest thing, and again, we need to probably have a separate conversation about this, is there's not really a ton of original IP anymore that's coming out in this sector. Like, it's all adaptations or sequels or prequels, and so
requels,
yeah. But anyway, we'll save that for another episode, I think, down the line. But yeah, that's all I have to say about this one. And on to episode 6. And on to episode 7, and then War of the Rohirrim.
I am genuinely looking forward to War of the Rohirrim.
Oh, I am too. I'm so pumped for that.
I mean, I'm going to see that. I don't know if it'll be opening day, but I'm going to see that in theaters for sure.
Oh, do you think? Is it going to be in theater?
It's definitely in theaters, yeah.
Oh, wow, really? Huh. I didn't know if it was just coming straight to streaming or not.
Yeah, no. Straight to theaters.
Ooh, yes, I will be there for that one too.
All right, but that's all we got for you for this episode. So this is 2 Nerds signing off. See ya.
See ya.